He
Got
usually
it.
controls on this phone.
Pardon?
He does on this phone.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope this is doing everything it's supposed to do.
He doesn't let us see behind the camera. I don't know nothing.
Is anybody here a geek?
Is there a red light?
Anybody here a technologist person with cameras?
No, let me see.
I think this is recording.
Like a little red light?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I'm good? Okay, please
The
begin.
The article I chose about the New York Times, it was about the Wells Fargo mess that they kind of got themselves into by obviously signing a bunch of people up for accounts that they didn't authorize. But the actual part of the article that I really went into was, dove into the history of it about 10 years ago, whenever we had the housing market crisis and some of the factors that actually had led Wells Fargo into a lot of customer relations that were just poor. They were adding fees onto closing costs. They were doing bad inspections, or they were doing forcible, like evictions, mortgages that were defaulting, but they were doing it unethically. And so the aspect I took out of it was duty ethics. If you look at Wells Fargo and you look at their website and what their company statement is, I mean, it's they want to promote the values of the customer. They want to help the customer achieve their financial dreams and goals that they kind of have set before themselves, whether it's buying a car, buying a house, or saving for anything really. But unfortunately, they had not been practicing this on the upper levels with the upper executives and CEOs, CFOs, stuff like that, as well as the lower level employees, people who just do sales, who do loans. They're trying to meet quotas that are given to them from the top. And so obviously to meet those, they're doing it unethically. They're signing people up, for those accounts and bad practices on the mortgages. I actually kind of also took it from the aspect of Wells Fargo is a publicly traded company. They're a stock company, so the duty to their stockholders would be obviously to make money. So I did take that in consideration. After 2008, their stock did go down. I have the figures in my paper, but I think it was like at $30 a share, $18 a share, something like that. It plummeted pretty well. But since then, it's actually been at an all-time high up until the middle part of this year. It had never been even higher, despite the fact that they had, poor relations with customers and poor public knowledge, essentially, during the housing market crisis. Even now, with the accounts and loans and stuff like that they have for auto loans, it's still higher than what it was in the past. So duty ethics, if you apply it towards the stockholders, short-term goals, I mean, they made the people money. They made their executives money. So from that aspect of it, I said that they did a good job. However, though, if you compare that back to what their overall goal is in the company mission with the statements that they have on their website, it doesn't fit. Serving the customer versus serving the stockholder, serving, the executives or whoever it might be.
Does anybody have any questions? That is a really interesting case. Thank you very much. Are you all familiar with this? What's been going on? What they did was actually illegal. And they were forcing the people who actually process loans or pick up, process the credit card applications. They were forcing them to just take people's names that they had, their customers, and just giving them another credit card without them knowing it, and charging fees on it. And they did this to over 2 million customers, and they had record high earnings and nobody caught on for several years. In the housing market bubble, the lenders, knowing that they were going to sell the mortgage to somebody else down the road. So you have a private lender who sets up a lending company, and he says, well, we can loan you this money. And they were lending money on houses that people could not afford. And they would say, oh yeah, you can qualify for that. Just, kind of here in this line, let's forget this bill because you're going to pay that off anyway, aren't you? Oh, sure. And they'd falsify people's financial statements to get them the home. And it was a home they could not afford to live in. And they would live there for maybe 6 months to a year, and they'd be foreclosed on. Well, the person who loaned the money to them, this little private loaner over here, maybe a small bank, they have sold that loan to a large holding company. So it doesn't come back on them. The holding company is now sitting there with a loan that cannot be served, that they can't service because the guy's gone bankrupt. And so that's what happened in 2007 when that bubble burst on the housing market. But this one is even more insidious because people are not even aware that their credit is being used. And it's affecting their credit ratings, and they're not getting any benefit at all. They don't even know this is happening to them. So that's a really good example. Okay, who's next? Please.
Actually, I did the same case. I did
Okay, well,
I did
let's
Wells
hear it.
Fargo, so I just, I mean, I didn't really know what else to say. There's unethical employees versus an unethical corporate culture. Essentially, like when you go into a bank, I mean, you just talked about it. Bankers get a commission if you sign up for a checking account. And if you sign up for a saving account, they get a commission. If they sign up for, if you sign up for a credit card or automatic bill pay, stuff like that, they all get commission. So, I mean, most people aren't going to sign up for all that stuff anyways, but like you said, they would sign people up for a checking account or a savings account that they didn't authorize. And then savings accounts usually you have to have a minimum fee in there, or you'll get a fee. So customers would end up having these fees that they didn't earn, or credit card annual fees. And they had sales quotas that they had to reach, but these sales quotas were so unattainable and unrealistic. It was either you get reprimanded, you go to a business meeting every morning where they're reprimanding people that don't meet their sales quotas, and they're praising the employees that are acting unethically and reaching these quotas. And they're just kind of blaming, the article was, they're blaming, the higher ups were pretty much blaming it on the lower level bankers. They dropped 5,300 of the employees, the low level, while what was her name, Carrie Tolstead, she was, I think, she was in charge of the 5,300. She got to leave she was able to retire back in July with a pretty good compensation package before this all came to the news. And then the executive, the CEO, just had to retire just the other day, so.
Anything else?
No, I mean, I didn't really know if it was duty ethics or utilitarianism, because it seems like they're kind of doing this for the good of the business, for the good of, all the stakeholders. They want the stakeholders to be happy. So I can see utilitarianism, but also duty ethics. So.
Okay. Does anybody else have a report on the same subject? That's good. By the way, they had people crying when they would tell them that you didn't meet your quota. And one woman came out of there and she almost committed suicide.
Yeah.
She was so not only were they lying to their customer and cheating their customer, they were treating their employees like dirt, and then they refused to give them their bonuses that they had earned, and they kept the bonuses and added that to the bottom line, and it brought the stock market up, brought their stocks up. They did some horrible things. Well, that's fun. Let's move on. Who would like to go next? Would you, sir?
Yeah, we'll go.
Okay, and by the way, I should have asked you when you stand up and always tell us your name. I'm sure Grant knows it, but.
Well, I'm Zach Hibbard, and I did mine over web tracking. Me and this other guy, I remember him talking about it last week. We kind of did over the same thing. It's just basically marketers trying to define whether or not it's ethically right to track people through their websites or whatever. But one guy was stating that, if they're on your website, that's your real estate. You're allowed to track what they're doing on your website. But once they leave, then how is that right or wrong? We're just kind of between the line between that. But what many do is they track trends. So they don't actually track your name or information. They just track what's popular for more of the business. But I did, I guess, virtue ethics, just to see if it was right or not to track somebody.
Okay, and what they were doing was marketing this or turning
Right,
this
yeah,
information
so a lot
over
of them
to?
have, there's a lot of third parties out there with like a bunch of cookies and cookies they call them, and they sell your information and stuff like that, but since there's not a legislation on that, it's just gonna keep going and going, and when's like crossing the line, like when is that? So, yeah,
Who do you think is the biggest user of this type of marketing?
like Amazon probably.
Yeah. And Facebook?
Facebook.
Facebook
yeah,
is now,
Amazon, Facebook.
now they're advertising and stuff. Yeah. Amazon's probably the biggest. Okay, anything else?
Yeah.
Does anyone have a similar?
I do.
Could you begin, please?
I think him and I might actually have the same article. I'm Zach.
Forbes.
Yeah.
Forbes, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Zach Clay, other Zach. So I did mine also over web tracking. It basically talks about how companies actually use data mining techniques in some popular applications and how the actual data is acquired and how it's used. So they use applications like Add This, which, like he said, basically tracks trends by using either your cookies or a method called fingerprinting, which basically is like tracking your IP address. So they don't track you specifically, but they track what you've been looking at, and that's kind of how you get that customized advertisement. So if you go and look at laptops and jump on Facebook or whatever your website is, you'll see a little ad that has laptops. Well, hey, I was just looking at those. That's kind of how it works, and those techniques are used to actually fund like the free applications that people love on the internet. So that's why Facebook is free. That's why Twitter's free, and all these websites are free, is because they're paid through or monetized through selling people's data. I actually took it from a utilitarian perspective. I figured for the greater good, people get to enjoy all these free applications for. It is an invasive process, but I think it's kind of a minimally invasive process. They take what you're looking at, but they don't take specific information to you. They're not looking for like credit card numbers, social security numbers. But that's kind of where the ethical dilemma was. If they do start taking information like that, then you're kind of running into potential ethical violations. But I didn't really look too much into that. I just kind of thought that you're paying for all these free applications that literally everyone gets to use. And I think everyone's on Facebook. My mother has a Facebook. So I figured it's for the good of all the people. The means kind of justify the ends justify the means, I guess, in that regard. But yeah, they talk about websites. That 14 million websites use Add This. Sites from Home Depot all the way to like the United States Department of the Interior use it. So there's literally everywhere uses these applications. Add This, and Google has one. I forget what it's called. DoubleClick. They do the same thing. So. And that's how Google's one of the biggest people that use this. They actually use this data mining technique quite frequently, and that's kind of how that's kind of how their search engine guesses. It kind of guesses what you're going to do. That's why their search engine is free to use. So.
Anything else? Does anyone have? Thank you. Does anyone have a similar or in this area? Okay, let's go on to something else. Who would like to go next?
I mean, mine might be somewhat related to that. I'll go ahead and go. My name is Peyton Donaldson. So mine has to deal with Apple. They're currently dealing with the government. I don't know who all here has heard of the San Bernardino shooting, but I'm sure most of you have. It was a shooting that occurred in San Bernardino, California, and 14 people were killed. And the government has gotten a hold of the shooter's phone, and they have apparently made some kind of a carbon copy and have been able to get the majority of the data off of the phone, but they're missing just a few percent of the texts, and they're wanting Apple to make a key that would allow them access to his legitimate phone to get the rest of that information. But Apple's thing is, if they make the key, it would be capable of opening any iPhone, so they would be able to access anyone's information that was a customer of Apple. And so Apple's like, we have a duty to our customers to protect their privacy, but we have a duty to the government to stop terrorist attacks or to help prevent future attacks. So it's just a really difficult position to sit in. I think that they probably have the greatest duty to their customers to protect their customers' information, especially over just a few percentage that's on this guy's phone.
So how is this resolved?
It hasn't been resolved yet. Apple's currently fighting it legally, saying that they won't, apparently they're completely capable of making a key that would allow them to have an encrypted access into everyone's phone. but they, like I said, they just don't want to allow the government to have that kind of access to their customers. Especially, you know, if they begin to use it on people who haven't done anything wrong, just as a screening. Because that's a very large invasion of privacy, but it hasn't been resolved yet. They're still fighting it in court. So it's pretty fresh.
Yeah, it is. I think they decided to back off the lawsuit, the government did, because they
Okay.
found another way.
Oh, okay, great.
They backed off, and but that's still going to be coming up more and more. The problem with using all this information, like NSA, National Security,
Right.
they were watching everybody's emails. And this guy by the name of Snowden, who was one of their one of their tech guys, really got very upset about this. And he left the NSA and took with him millions of documents, which he then leaked to WikiLeaks.
Wow.
And now they're trying to bring him back to the United States. He went to Russia. I think he's in Norway right now, and he's fighting extradition. Does anybody remember his first name?
Edward.
Edward Snowden, yeah, that was it. Thank you. And what kind of ethics were you discussing?
Duty
Here?
ethics.
Duty ethics?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else on a similar?
I don't know if
Well,
it's similar.
that's fine. Does anybody have anything similar to this gentleman's? Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay, I did mine.
Oh, could you please tell us who you are?
I'm Talitha Henderson. I did mine over Volkswagen, the emission scandal that they had like a few years ago. They were basically caught in a scandal where they were attaching devices to their vehicles, and it caused their vehicles to go in like this test mode when being tested. And basically they put a rig on the car, and in the test, they made them seem like that their emissions were below normal, when in fact, when the cars were released and being on the road, they were actually 40 times over the limit. And I thought that was against duty ethics, and that's the main thing I talked about, because you're advertising to the customers that you have this eco-friendly engine and this eco-friendly car. And they even have a statement basically claiming that their goal is to offer safe and environmentally sound cars, which can basically be good for the environment, and when in fact their vehicles don't even pass the normal standards. And so I thought that was pretty unethical and towards duty ethics, because one, it's illegal, and number two, you're false advertising. And so that's basically what I did my whole paper there.
Thank you. So they lied to in order to sell vehicles that it seemed like they were eco-friendly and had like
Right,
26 to 30 miles per gallon
right,
data, and they were really coming in around 18 to 20, I think.
right. And yeah, so their vehicle engines were actually releasing nitrogen oxide pollutants on the road 40 times above the limit.
Wow.
And so, yeah, not only were they false advertising, but they weren't even meeting the legal requirements.
Thank you. How many of you feel like people who do this, that the president of the company should go to prison, should go to jail, or be fined or
He did
something?
step down, and that's about it.
Wells Fargo, they're still determining whether they're going to prosecute that guy,
Yeah.
the guy who started all that, the president of the company. Be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Next, who would like to go
I
next?
did my article over the same deal.
Okay, well, tell us what
so-
you know, what you learned.
My name's Chris. I did mine based over duty ethics. I'll just talk a little bit more about the device they installed. They kind of secretly installed that in over 11 million cars across the world. Yeah. They called it the defeat device, and what it did was when it would recognize that it was in tests, and so it would make the car start going below normal like performance rating, so it wouldn't perform at this like same speed as it would on the road or something. And then once it did get on the road, it would notice that it would be like on highways or whatever, so it would completely negate what it did in those tests and start, going past what other cars do. This whole scandal, it got labeled the diesel dupe. That's what they call it now. Yeah, that's pretty much it. They, the initial tests, I believe, were done in Europe, but from the EPA's test, and that's the environmental, what was that? The Environmental Protection Agency. And I mean, essentially, I mean, I think that the tests were flawed in the beginning because it shouldn't be allowed to, you know, have that option to have someone put in a device and defeat the test. So that kind of tells me that the tests need to be fixed also. But I mean, again, I'm not saying that Volkswagen isn't at fault, but there's also a lot of other car companies that are doing that also that just haven't been caught yet.
Yeah, possibly could be.
That's kind of
Anything
what they were wondering too, like how, like more than just it's hard to fire just the CEO because obviously it was a bunch of people involved in installing the actual devices. So.
There's a chain of command that everything has to go through when you're talking about a big corporation, so, you know.
But ultimately, isn't the CEO always responsible?
No, absolutely, yeah.
Still
If
goes
you're the head
back
of the
to-
company, everything's your responsibility.
Everybody know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, do other countries have as strict EPA rules as we do?
No, absolutely not.
You think we have the strictest?
Maybe not in like
I thought Europe
certain
had the-
areas, but
I thought Europe had the strictest EPA. Or actually, no, I'm sorry, I read, yeah, our country does have.
I think some of the, like Sweden, Norway, countries like that have very high standards.
Yeah, I can't remember now. but
Who do you
it's
think
about-
has the lowest standards in pollution? Pardon?
China?
I believe you're right. It certainly is, in terms of impact on the world, it's the second largest economy. So, anything else on this? Anybody else like to make comments? And what kind of ethics were you?
I did mine over duty as well,
Duty?
since they, I mean, Volkswagen has a duty and obligation to, you know, to their customers and being honest and.
When you do this kind of research, do you feel like it makes you more aware when you're listening to the news of what's going on? Does it change you? Does it transform you in any way?
I mean, I think it makes us more aware of what's going on, you know, because some of us may not have known what was about some of these articles and about some of these situations.
Does it change your mind in who you're going to do business with? How many of you want to run out and fish an account at Wells Fargo? Raise your hand. And how many want to go with the Honda? Was it Honda?
Volkswagen.
Volkswagen, yeah. Does it change your mind about that company?
I wouldn't want one.
Would it make a buying decision change for you, knowing
Yeah.
of what they have done? Okay. Okay, who's next? These are all really interesting, by the way.
Okay.
I appreciate it very much what you're doing. Who's good? You're next?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh?
My name's Brett. My article was over, basically there's several people, of course, that hate smoking in tobacco companies and what they do. Basically the article was about people saying it was wrong for other companies to accept donations from tobacco companies for their events and such. And the other thing, they said everyone was freaking out because some type of priest led like a prayer with a CEO of a big tobacco company, and everyone thought that was wrong. And then people don't like that there's tobacco passed out at events, or that they'll hold events just to recruit employees for tobacco companies. And then the other thing they were saying is that they should donate towards the victims they harm if they're going to be making all these donations. They usually don't donate towards anything like that, of course. And basically, it's just a conflict of, I mean, if you believe utilitarianism, then selling tobacco is probably wrong. Same thing with virtue ethics. But I said, if you apply it to duty ethics, I mean, the people who go to these, the people who do tobacco, you know, it's legal, and you have the choice to say no, just like they have the right to sell it, because it still applies by the law. Not saying it's right, tobacco's not a good thing, but it's still morally, if you would by duty ethics, it's not wrong. And then I also said, when it comes to accepting donations, I mean, you have the right to shun whatever company it is that's accepting donations, just like they have the right to accept donations. And then I think the prayer thing, that's kind of ridiculous to judge that. I felt like, I mean, I guess you can judge it if you want to. It's kind of the same thing. If you want to shun them for that, go right ahead. You have the right to do that. As far as tobacco being passed out in advance, kind of the same thing. As far as, I mean, you have the choice to turn it away. You don't have to take it and do tobacco to start. That's about it, really.
And what theory were you working on?
I applied it to duty ethics.
Can anybody name what drugstore just stopped selling tobacco? Pardon?
CVS.
I think CVS and Walgreens, I think are both, was it first Walgreens?
I thought it was-
It's
I thought it was
CVS.
CVS
I
is
heard
there?
somebody get some cigarettes at Walgreens like yesterday. It's CVS.
Yeah, they're not selling cigarettes, which I think is a wonderful statement to make because, you know, we're here to help keep people healthy by selling the appropriate drugs and, you know, and let's sell some cigarettes on the side. So I think that's really putting your ethics up front and morals. Okay, who's next? Sir.
I'm Jonathan Guerrero, and I did mine over the petrodollar. And I use utilitarianism to analyze this. So, for those of you that don't know what the petrodollar is you can only buy oil in dollars. So what that means is, effectively, we get goods such as, from Japan we buy, cars, a whole bunch of cars. And in turn, we give them dollars, which they use to fuel their economy, by buying oil. Well, we can print that oil. Not that oil. We can print as much dollars as we want because our money is no longer backed by any physical commodity such as gold. In 1975, Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard, which gave us that ability to print as much money as we wanted to, and also struck a deal with all the OPEC nations to only accept money in dollars. So that gives us a huge advantage, economic advantage over all the other countries, and it's given rise to the greatest military in the world. As Sir John Acton said, he was a philosopher, said, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." No, I feel that's where the U.S. is right now. We're at a huge advantage financially, and it shows. Our standard of living is for this. The amount of people that we have is, amazing. The kinds of projects that we take on are, it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have as much money as we do. And that could be coming to an end because tensions with Saudi Arabia, which is the main OPEC nation, their tensions are getting pretty high because there's this law that Congress is currently trying to pass. It's called, I have it in my notes. Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, which will effectively let U.S. citizens sue anyone that was involved in the 9/11 terrorist acts. And never before has it been able to, citizens sue a nation, other individuals from another country or a nation.
Or a nation.
So that could lead to, an unprecedented amount of tensions with, if we can sue them, then they can sue, any U.S. citizen or, the military or anything like that. And that would just open up a Pandora's box and probably bring an end to the petrodollar. What I said, my solution to that is you know, let's take a look at the European Union. They are a group of nations that have been working together, you know, to create a very successful currency. And you know, there's a wide representation. You know, you have your wealthy nations and you have your not so wealthy nations. So I think they would be a better alternative than the dollar because they represent more people's interest as opposed to one giant nation's interest. So that was my solution to that. You know,
And you were using what theory?
utilitarianism.
Utilitarian, okay. Anyone have any comments on this? Anyone doing anything similar to this? Okay, who would like to go next? Who are we left with? Ma'am, I don't think you have gone, or you? And who else? All four of
We
you?
all know, yeah.
Okay, and all three of you, right? And I believe you're next, or you're volunteering? Well, good.
My name is David McNeil. I'm doing mine over Facebook and what they did. They did a couple of years back about data mining. So what they did is they did a small study about almost 750,000 users. What they would do is it was a contagion experiment, emotional contagion experiment, and they would update people's news feeds. So what their theory was, people who see sad posts on their Facebooks, they're sad. They see happy posts, they're happy. So they would manipulate Facebook users' news feed in order to gather the data, and then by determining how they would post, how they manipulated their feed, they would determine if the contagion experiment worked or not. So the article pretty much goes in depth about how if it was ethical for Facebook to knowingly go in and manipulate people's Facebook feeds. And the way they got around this was they made it permissible because Facebook's data use policy does, you know, when you click on accept agreement, no one reads that stuff. So somewhere in the contract and the data use policy, it gives them the right to do that. But I chose the utilitarian approach because utilitarianism suggests that the decisions are right if they benefit the majority of the useful of the people, and they are justified, their decisions for the greater good at the greater expense of the select few. And since Facebook was data mining and manipulating people's feeds unknowingly to these people, it was not very ethical for them to do that, pretty much. So they were under some scrutiny here a little bit ago about that, and it was kind of like an Edward Snowden case where one Facebook member had leaked the information out pretty much, and that got out, and they were under a lot of scrutiny because of that.
And what did you say your
Utilitarian approach.
Okay. All right, any discussion?
I mean, I've heard whether or not you have a Facebook, they still have 75,000 like different individual bits of information on you. So, I mean, it's pretty rough. Like, you don't even have to be one of their consumers to be tracked by them. That's why they're a billion-dollar company or multi-billion-dollar company with, you know, out charging for their service.
Listen, it doesn't really have to do with tracking. It's kind of just like, I mean, so you have 10 friends who you want to hear from. Well,
Right.
Facebook comes in and says you can't hear those 10 friends because they're not happy.
Gotcha.
So it's just kind of like it's them blocking you from
Communicating with certain people at
Exactly.
certain times. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of
just
weird.
because if they post a picture of a sad kid, it makes people sad. Just for example, they would take that feed out of this person's feed and just act like it didn't exist at all. and they got around. I mean, they were under a lot of scrutiny of this because of this, but they got around it because somewhere in those 100 pages of the data use policy, it states they have access to that.
That's crazy.
This is my personal experience on this. This is really creepy, what I'm going to tell you. I have a lot of photos on my websites because I own a company, Stone Line Inn, and I have over 10,000 pictures on that alone. And then I have Facebook for myself and a couple of websites, you know, different things. And not long ago, I clicked on something, and a picture of, and I think it was something to do with refinancing mortgages. And this woman's face is there, her upper torso and her face. And it's one of these that they've got the hand moving or something to get your attention so your eye will catch it and then look at it. And in this case, she's going like this. It was my mother. It's my mother. My mother is dead. They have mined a picture of my mother, and they're using it in an advertisement. And so they can, any of your photographs on Facebook, that's theirs. Yeah, is that not creepy?
Yeah.
I showed it to my sister. I mean, I was creeped out. I really was. There's my mother, and she's been dead since 2002. And there she was, waving to me. But I just think that's wrong. I really do.
Yeah.
But there's nothing I can do about it. At least not at this level. You're our last person, I think. Have we got everybody? Okay.
Okay, I'm Phoebe, and my article is talking about should we put more limit in the marketplace or we should leave the market alone, because if we put more limit in this kind of situation, the market will not be efficient enough. Like the author is talking about a company, their employee use their own customer information to create a new account because they want to reach their sales goals, so they use their customer information whether they willing to create a new account or not. So this scandal burst out, their old customer didn't trust this company anymore. So I think at least the market should be not illegal to do this kind of things. Even when you don't think about moral thing, you will make things much easier and more efficient, but it's not right in the end. At least it will not make things better, and it's opposite way to make things worse and make customer and make people don't trust you anymore. Yeah.
And what theory were you working on?
I think it's moral. I think you have to do things in the right way to be legal, and yeah.
Any other discussion? Anyone? Okay, I think that's all for that.